Welcome to the Ari Hoffman Show on Talk Radio 570 KVI, your home for the politically homeless, streaming at KVI.com and on the KVI app. If you want to be part of the most dangerous show on the airwaves, call or text the Warrior Injury Law Studio line at 206-421-5757. That's 206-421-5757. Coming up at 5:45, your chance to win fantabulous prizes, including a $50 Daniel's Broiler gift card and tickets to the Bremerton Air Show. But before we get to any of that, I have exclusive audio right now of Donald Trump throwing Zelenskyy out of the White House. Give a listen.
And until you do, you can all get your fat asses out of my White House. CJ, show these people out.
I believe we can find the door.
Find it now.
Okay, let's wind back the clock a little bit and give a little perspective on how we got here, because that's important. What was supposed to happen was Zelenskyy was supposed to come to the White House today. There was going to be a deal over minerals that was going to move everything towards a ceasefire. It was going to be the U.S. and Ukraine were going to develop these deposits together. That way they'd kind of be a protectorate of the United States. That way they could say to Russia, back off, this is our turf, leave us alone, and that would lead to a ceasefire. The problem has been since the beginning of the war in Ukraine over 3 years ago that nobody has told anybody what success, what the end game, what the goal is. If you say to me right now, Ari, what's the goal for the Middle East with Israel and Gaza? Very simple. Get back all the hostages, end Hamas. Hamas is destroyed, removed from power, or they surrender. That's it. Simple, easy, piece of cake. I can answer that in 2 seconds. I haven't heard Zelenskyy say what the end game is for Russia and Ukraine. I never heard Joe Biden say what it was. I heard, well, we got to beat Putin. We got to beat Putin. We got to push back Putin. What does that mean? Does that mean you got to take back the Donbass region? Does that mean you're going back for Crimea? Which, let's not forget, that happened when Obama was president. Let's not forget Obama said to Putin, I'll have more flexibility after the election. But meanwhile, everybody talks about Donald Trump conspiring with Putin. So what does that mean? And by the way, Ukraine is not doing well in this war right now. They have limited resources. We've been backing them up. If we hadn't backed them up, they would have fallen a long time ago. So does that mean they take back the Donbass region? Does that mean they take back Crimea? What does it mean we go into Russia and overthrow the government? What does it actually look like? And because nobody said it, we'd had 3 years where Joe Biden and the Democrats just write the checks, and never expect anything in return. We knew North and South Korea, we want to stop North Korea from invading South Korea. Well, hey, guess what? It's basically just a ceasefire there right now. It's not a full-on truce and peace, any of that. There's a giant minefield between the two. North and South Vietnam, we knew what the goal was there. It wasn't a pretty goal, but we kind of knew what the goal was there. We started having problems when it came to the wars with Afghanistan and Iraq. It's what does winning look like? What's the end game with any of this? Oh, we gotta bring democracy. Well, did that work? The problem is for 3.5 years, we don't know what the end game is. And because we don't know what the end game is, what are we paying for? What are we fighting for? You want to argue with me over what Trump did today? You want to disagree with me? Tell me what the end game for this war is, because I still haven't heard that out of Ukraine. I didn't hear that out of Joe Biden. I didn't hear that out of the Democrats. So Zelenskyy comes to the White House. Donald Trump, by the way, Donald Trump was on his best behavior. So with the heads of state we've seen come to the White House, there's 2 treatments they get. They either get the warm welcome or they get welcomed by staffers. Macron got welcomed by staffers. Zelenskyy got Donald Trump. Got the same thing Netanyahu got. Shows up, greets him warmly, same kind of pomp and circumstance. Come on back, let's hang out. Joking around, talking about what Zelensky's wearing because the guy doesn't own a tie.
I do like your clothing, though.
Yeah, really?
Even though I think he's a great guy, by the way. But I don't know if you two like each other, but you know what? I think he's dressed beautifully.
I like this guy.
I think he's dressed beautifully.
He sounds like Borat when he talks in English. It's kind of funny. Anywho, it's everything's going swimmingly. Now, what was this about? How do these things normally work? Normally what happens is meeting in the Oval Office, private meeting, Joint press conference afterwards where everybody asked questions. All the negotiating was done. However, I knew something was up from the beginning. Why? J.D. Vance was in the room. Okay, not out of the order, but then Marco Rubio was in the room too. Whoa, wait. Why is everybody showing up for this meeting? I was kind of wondering, is there friction behind the scenes on negotiating the deal even before we got to this place, even before we got there? All Zelenskyy had to do, because you're dealing with Trump and you have to know who you're talking to, he's coming to Trump's house. He is an invited guest. If somebody came into my house and insulted me, I'd say, blank you and the horse you rode in on, get the hell out of my house. Zelenskyy has gotten billions of dollars. We've asked nothing in return. Now we're talking about becoming business partners. He can't bite his tongue for 2 minutes? Not for 2 minutes? Here's where the meltdown starts kind of beginning. So I noticed this when I was rewatching the clips and watching Zelenskyy's body language. He starts getting really uncomfortable when Trump says this.
I hope I'm going to be remembered as a peacemaker. This would be a great thing if we could do this. I'm doing this to save lives more than anything else. Second is to save a lot of money, but I consider that to be far less important. So I hope I'm going to, thank you, Brian, for that question. It was a nice question. I hope I'll be known and recognized as a peacemaker. This would be a great thing to solve. This is a very dangerous situation. You know, this could lead to a third world war. This was headed in the wrong direction. If this election were lost, if we didn't win this election, and by the way, we won it by a lot. That was a mandate. We won every swing state. We won the popular vote by millions and millions of votes. We won everything. The districts, you look at the areas of red, take a look at a map. This was a big mandate, and this was one of the things. I said, we're going to get this thing settled. If we didn't win, I think this could have very well ended up in a third world war.
He's right, by the way, because if Biden had won, Putin would have redoubled his efforts. Putin probably would have taken more and continued his drive for Kyiv. That's what would have happened. But Zelenskyy starts getting uncomfortable there. Now, you know Trump's going to say that. Mike, how many clips have we played where Trump always says the same thing? You know, when I was prepping for my interview with Donald Trump, I knew I didn't have to ask certain questions because he was going to say them anyway. He was going to say voter fraud. He was going to say election was stolen. He was going to say Russia. I didn't have to ask those questions. I asked other questions knowing he'd say that. You know that. But then this is when things start getting uncomfortable. Zelenskyy starts twitching when Donald Trump says this.
It's a pathway to peace. It's a pathway to getting something solved.
Now, here's the first thing. Zelenskyy starts looking uncomfortable when you say pathway to peace. Let me tell you something that I've learned from doing debates, from having meetings, from being on TV. When you're talking to somebody, people are watching you, especially when there's every eye in the world on you. You look at the person you're meeting with. You do not scratch your crotch. You do not wiggle in place. You do not comb your hair. You do not pick your nose. You look at the person as if everything they are saying is the most important thing in the world. You process, you respond. But he's twitching. He's getting very uncomfortable when Donald Trump's talking about peace.
And I feel that as the head of this country, I have an obligation to do that. Plus, you know, we're very much involved. We got involved. It's too bad we got involved because there should have been no involvement because there should have been no war.
Okay, that's where Zelenskyy starts getting really uncomfortable. Because basically the way Zelenskyy probably read this was, oh, we fought and died for nothing? You think this was a nothing war? And you know what? I understand it, but at the same time, the guy's been the one paying the bills for it. Our country has been paying the bills for it. So show up and say thank you. That's it. You just got to get through a meeting. That's all you have to do.
And there shouldn't have been October 7th.
He's right. All of this is because of Biden's disaster. But Zelensky's blaming Trump.
That would have never happened. As you know, Iran was broke. They had no money to give to Hezbollah. They had no money to give to Hamas. They were stone cold broke. And then under Biden, they became rich as hell. They went from no money to $300 billion in a period of 4 years. And they gave a lot of that money away, and you see what happened. And that's a real mess also that we hope to be able to solve. But, no, I appreciate your question very much. I feel I have an obligation to try and do something to stop the death.
Now, here's where things kind of go off the rails. It's clear Zelenskyy does not want a ceasefire. It's clear Zelenskyy wants to win. And I think the trouble behind the scenes was that Zelenskyy is saying, well, I want back the Donbass region. And the U.S. is saying, well, how do you plan on doing that unless we put boots on the ground or Europe puts boots on the ground? How do you plan on doing that? Because you're losing right now. And I think that may have been the source of disagreement, but at least we had this deal. There was going to be a ceasefire, and you get to keep this area. And Zelenskyy was probably thinking after that, well, after that is after that, and we'll figure out how to do it. But here's the thing. Zelenskyy loses the election if he doesn't get back Donbass, because he has told his people that is what he's going to do. He hasn't explained that to the rest of the world, but he's told his people, we're going to win and we're going to beat Putin. We don't know what that actually looks like. Zelenskyy knows he is finished in politics locally if he doesn't do that. If there's a ceasefire, Ukraine says, dude, you're out of there. So that's when things start melting down. That's when things start melting down. When Trump is talking about peace, that's the issue. And that's where Zelenskyy starts getting really, really uncomfortable. So here's where things start falling apart.
It's going to be a very hard thing to do business like this, I tell you.
Just say thank you.
I said a lot of times thank you to American people.
Except that there are disagreements, and let's go litigate those disagreements rather than trying to fight it out in the American media when you're wrong. We know that you're wrong.
But you see, I think it's good for the American people to see what's going on out here. I think it's very important. That's why I kept this going so long. You have to be thankful. You don't have the cards.
Thankful.
You're buried there. Your people are dying.
I can tell you
You're
again,
running low
I
on
know.
soldiers.
Don't, please,
you're running
Mr.
low on
President.
soldiers. It would be a damn good thing.
Mr.
And then
President.
you tell us, I don't want a ceasefire. I don't want a ceasefire. I want to go, and I wanted this. Look, if you could get a ceasefire right now, I tell you, you take it so the bullets stop flying and your men stop getting killed.
Of course we want to stop the war.
But you're saying you don't want a ceasefire.
But I said to you,
I want a ceasefire.
With guarantees.
Because you'll get a ceasefire faster than any.
Exactly. You'll get a ceasefire, but you won't get back the areas you lost. It's been 3 years. You guys haven't made any gains in that regard.
It's a pathway to peace. It's a pathway to getting something solved. And I feel that as the head of this country, I have an obligation to do that.
Let's remember that. That's what Trump is going for. And J.D. Vance gets into it, saying, all we ask you to do is have this meeting and we're going to work this thing out. J.D. Vance came off the best in this meeting, by the way. He really, really did. It went out of control from there.
Your country is in big trouble.
Can I
Wait a
answer?
minute. No.
Can
You've
I
done a lot
answer?
of talking. Your country is in big trouble.
I know.
You're not winning.
I know.
You're not winning this. You have a damn good chance of coming out okay because of us.
Mr. President, we are staying in our country, staying strong from the very beginning of the war. We've been alone, and we are thankful. I said thanks
You haven't
in
been
this
alone.
cabinet,
You
and
haven't
not
been
only
alone.
in this cabinet.
We gave you, through
I
this
said
stupid
thank you.
president, $350 billion.
You voted
we gave
for
you
your
military
president.
equipment,
You
and you
voted
men
for
are
your
brave,
president.
but they had to use our military.
What about West
if
Virginia?
you didn't have
You
our
invited
military
me.
equipment,
You invited
if
me
you
to
didn't
speak.
have our military equipment, this war would have been over in 2 weeks.
What Zelenskyy was trying to do was show he's tougher than Trump so he could go back to his people and say, I beat Trump. And the problem is you're doing that in the guy's house. And the problem is you're doing that when you know how explosive Donald Trump can be. You know who you're dealing with. You know what that's like. And instead you come in there. Was he asking for boots on the ground? Was he asking for American soldiers to go fight and die in Ukraine? Because that's what it sounds like. That's what this sounds like.
Excuse me. That was with Obama, who gave you sheets, and I gave you javelins.
Yes.
I gave you the javelins to take out all those tanks. Obama gave you sheets. In fact, the statement is Obama gave sheets and Trump gave javelins. You got to be more thankful, because let me tell you, you don't have the cards. With us, you have the cards. But without us, you don't have any cards.
The phrase reminds me, never look a gift horse in the mouth. Don't bite the hand that feeds you. How many different ways of saying that? All you had to do was get through that meeting. That's all you had to do. That's when J.D. Vance got involved.
I'm talking about the kind of diplomacy that's going to end the destruction of your country.
Yes, but if you are
Mr.
not
President,
strong...
Mr. President, with respect, I think it's disrespectful for you to come into the Oval Office and try to litigate this in front of the American media. Right now, you guys are going around and forcing conscripts to the front lines because you have manpower problems. You should be thanking the President for trying to bring an end to this conflict.
Have you ever been to Ukraine that you say what problems we have?
I have been to.
Come once.
I've actually watched and seen the stories, and I know what happens is you bring them on a propaganda tour, Mr. President. Do you disagree that you've had problems bringing people into your military?
We have problems.
And do you think that it's respectful
to
come to the Oval Office of the United States of America and attack the administration that is trying to prevent the destruction of your country?
A lot of questions. Let's start from the beginning.
Sure.
First of all, during the war, everybody has problems. Even you, but you have nice ocean and don't feel now, but you will feel it in the future. God bless.
You don't know that.
God bless.
You don't
God
know
bless.
that.
You will not have a war.
Don't tell us what we're going to feel. We're trying to solve a problem. Don't tell us what we're going to feel.
I'm not telling you.
Because
I'm
you're in no
answering on
position
this
to
question.
dictate that.
That's
Remember
exactly
this.
what
I'm not
You're
dictating.
in no position to dictate what we're going to feel.
See, here's the little debate that we can have, and we can go round and round on this all day. Ukraine's right next door to Russia. They're going to have security concerns because that's who they're right next door to, just like Israel's right next door to Lebanon and Jordan and Syria and you name it, right? That's the thing. We have an ocean between us, but we have airplanes. So you know what? If Russia wanted to attack us, they would, but there's mutually assured destruction, which means they're not going to attack us. But Zelensky's trying to get us to come into the war. Zelenskyy says they're going to be your problem eventually. Yeah, you know what? That may be true, but does that mean the whole world has to go to war with Russia? See, here's the thing. Zelensky's trying to suck in U.S. soldiers because his soldiers are losing and Europe isn't stepping up. If Europe is so concerned about Russia, they need to step up too. Will they eventually be our problem? They've been our problem in the past. We fought them for the entire 20th century almost. They have been our problem. Nobody's disagreeing with that. But the issue is right now, what is Zelensky's end game? That's the thing nobody can answer me on. What's the end game? Now, in Republican world, Lindsey Graham is the one who defends Ukraine no matter what, even contrary to the party, even contrary to the president. Lindsey Graham was on Fox News talking about his opinion of this, and I was fully expecting him to back Zelenskyy. Here's what he said.
I met with Zelenskyy this morning. I urged him to stay on message, be grateful, be thankful. We'll talk about details of security guarantees later. Keep it upbeat, keep it positive. It was absolute, utter disaster. The question for me is he redeemable in the eyes of Americans? Most Americans witnessing what they saw today would not want Zelenskyy to be their business partner, including me, and I've been to Ukraine 9 times since the war started. I met with him this morning. President Trump I talked to last night, he was upbeat about the deal. I've never been more proud of President Trump for showing the American people in the world you don't trifle with this man. He was very positive. He was very upbeat. He wanted to get a ceasefire. He wants to end the war. And Zelenskyy felt like he needed to debate Trump in the Oval Office. JD was awesome.
Yeah, that's Lindsey Graham, your biggest fan. Your biggest fan. And here's the difference between him and Schumer. Schumer does it because he hates whatever Trump does and, oh, Ukraine. But Lindsey Graham is the one who's actually been putting his money where his mouth is. And Lindsey Graham is saying, I can't think the Americans are going to back this guy anymore. Zelenskyy may be the wrong partner for peace because I don't think he wants peace. The question is, what is the end game? Is the end game a ceasefire? Is the end game everybody goes back to their corners? Is the end game that they take back the Donbass? Is the end game that they take back Crimea? Is the end game that they overthrow Putin? Because nobody has told us, we don't know. So we can keep funneling money into this and not know what the end game is, and that's why we're stuck in the situation we're in right now. Odds are at some point this weekend, Zelensky's going to realize his mistake because he seems to have done that already, where he's posting things on social media saying, thank you, America, thank you, President Trump. It doesn't look like those were pre-done tweets. It looks like it was done in response because he said, I want peace. All these other world leaders are saying, oh, Zelenskyy, we got your back. Really? Are you paying the bills for this war? Are you sending soldiers to this war? Anybody can post a tweet. It doesn't mean you're actually in it. You may disagree with me. If so, you give us a call or a text at 206-421-5757. That's 206-421-5757. We go to the Warrior Injury Law Studio line. Take a call from the other Jay in Idaho. Jay, what's going on, buddy?
Hey, Ari. Great analysis of the events today. I'm not going to disagree with you. I'm going to take it from a different perspective, though, as a history major and a baby boomer, is that we have spent so much blood and treasure bailing out the Europeans, going back to the turn of the last century, the First World War, the Second World War, colonialism and all the crazy crap they created in Southeast Asia and Africa and even the Middle East, and that we've had to bail them out, and we've done it through blood and treasure over the last 120 years or so. And it is refreshing to see a president that is looking out after the taxpayer and Americans so that no blood is spilled by the craziness of Europe. I am very down on the Europeans, generally speaking, and have been since the end of the Cold War, because we've bailed them out. We've had to fix things, and they're spineless, and they always are. So all these world leaders saying, "Oh, we've got your back, Ukraine." No, they don't, because ultimately they're going to fold, and they always fold. And it's American leadership and American power that causes the Europeans to do something. Just like in the late 80s with the Reagan buildup, that I was stationed in Germany and watched firsthand, and then the Russians, the Soviets cried uncle, and they gave up because of what America did, not what NATO did, not what the Germans did or the Brits. And so it's just refreshing, and it was wonderful to watch this exchange so that the American people, the public, the taxpayer, Americans, and the world could see what this is all about. This Zelenskyy guy, I don't trust him. He's a POS, but he's the only guy we got, and I know he's going to come groveling back, and he's going to agree to it ultimately because, again, we have a leader, a strong leader, and I am so proud to be an American today, so proud of President Trump and J.D. Vance, and I don't know what else to say, but I could probably drink beers with you.
No, I think you're right, Jay. I think it really comes down to the fact is that at the end of the day, it's just, we just expect America to write a check or America to bail us out, and that's not happening today, and it hasn't worked out so well in the past. Jay, appreciate the call.
How many gardens of stone are out there in Europe for young Americans that died trying to save the Europeans?
Exactly right. Jay, appreciate the call, buddy. You have a great weekend. You want to be part of the show, give us a call or a text at 206-421-5757. That's 206-421-5757. Lots more to discuss as the show continues, my friends. Your calls about what's going on. Also, the latest insanity in Seattle. Are people attacking Teslas? What's that all about? We'll give you all the details when we come back. You're listening to the Ari Hoffman Show on Talk Radio 570 KBI. Welcome back to the Ari Hoffman Show. Don't forget that today at 4:30, you got Brandy Cruz who's going to give us the details of everything going on in Washington's Olympia. And coming up at 5:30, my friends, you got everything happening with Lars Larson. He's going to give us the latest details on what's happening down in Oregon. We go back to the Warrior Injury Law studio line, take a call from Rob in Oak Harbor. Rob, what's going on?
I'm a baby boomer, and I've studied history my whole entire life, as well as the last caller, so I just want to echo what he was saying. I agree 100%. However, he left out that it's always been the Democrats and the warmongers of the Democratic Party that have started it. The conservative Republicans, we want what's best for the Republic. We don't want to see our tax dollars funding endless wars, and that's what the Democrats have been doing probably since the Democratic Party was formed. They're behind everything that ever has been and what they want.
Well, I'm not sure that's entirely. Hang on a second, Rob. We did the Afghanistan war. We did the Iraq war. That's on Republicans. You have a point with like Vietnam and stuff. The Democrats got us into
I know.
those.
We're talking about the bushwhacks, and yeah.
But they're still Republicans. We may disagree on what kind of Republicans they are, especially how the Republican Party has changed. But we can't just put this all on the Democrats. You want to say it's the military-industrial complex. You want to say it's the warmongers. I agree with you. There are people who just want to get us into war, but here's something else. They always want to get us into war and never seem to know how to win. That seems to be the biggest problem. Now, the question is, the other problem is, and we've had this as foreign policy in the U.S. for decades, Republican or Democrat, it just seems like we don't want anybody to fight. So rather than let anybody finish a war, we just get in there and say, no, slow it down, stop it. Like they did that with the Middle East for years. How can we get Israel not to attack Hamas? Well, then you let Hamas build up, and you get October 7th. Right? So that's the thing is, how do we actually win these wars? I don't think we've actually even know the answer to that anymore.
I don't know what war we've won other than World War II.
That seems to be the last one we did win. Rob, appreciate the call. Appreciate you being part of the show. You want to be part of the show, you give us a call or a text at 206-421-5757. That's 206-421-5757. Lots of you are chiming in on the text line. It's almost unanimous in support of Donald Trump because he's right. He's right. As we say again, what's the end game? Now, Zelenskyy, not too long ago, was over on Fox News with Brett Baer trying to explain all this. This was a pre-scheduled interview. So this was scheduled before anything was going to happen. It was supposed to be, yay, we signed a peace agreement, but it took a very different turn.
From you, Mr. President, a thought that you owe the president an apology.
No, I respect the president and I respect American people. And if, I think that we have to be very open and very honest. And I'm not sure that we did something bad. I think maybe sometimes some things we have to discuss out of media, with all respect to democracy and to a free media. But there are things where we have to understand the position of Ukraine and Ukrainians. And I think that is the most important thing. Yes, we are partners. We are very close partners. We have to be fair. We have to be very free.
There's clearly a language barrier here, but Bibi Netanyahu, his English is pretty good, so it's not a fair comparison. But anytime you ask Bibi Netanyahu, what's the goal for the war? He says, give back the hostages, destroy Hamas. What is the goal for the war here? And I don't think Zelenskyy ever actually says it. Meanwhile, Donald Trump said this as he was getting on Marine One, heading out to Mar-a-Lago for the weekend. Are we going to have the Mar-a-Lago Accords?
He's got to say, I want to make peace. He doesn't have to stand there and say about Putin this, Putin that, and all negative things. He's got to say, I want to make peace. I don't want to fight a war any longer. His people are dying. He doesn't have the cards, just so you understand it, okay?
And that's a very important point. You look at other world leaders, they don't want their people dying. You want to win a war, but you don't want people dying. I don't hear Zelenskyy talk about his people that often. I don't. Maybe he does, and I haven't heard it. But don't you want to save your people? Right now, Ukraine is losing. Russia got reinforced from North Korea. Russia got reinforced. Russia forces people to the front lines. They don't care. They're all cannon fodder. That's how they beat the Nazis. Stalin just used whoever was around, and that seems to be exactly what Putin's doing, and Ukraine is losing. Can we get to a peace deal? Can we get to a ceasefire? Where are we trying to get to here? And I think the messaging problem is part of the big issue here where we don't know what winning looks like. Lots more to discuss as the show continues. Don't forget, coming up at 5:30, we're going to be talking to our buddy Lars Larson about some crazy stories you won't get anywhere else. You're listening to the Ari Hoffman Show on Talk Radio 570 KVI. The meltdown over Elon Musk and Joy Behar continue. Or Joy Behar's meltdown over Elon Musk continues. Everybody's losing it over Doge. They're absolutely losing their minds. They can't actually articulate what their point is, but Joy Behar jumped the shark over on The View yesterday. This is what she said.
And Elon Musk kisses his butt and strokes his tiny ego or big ego, whatever it is. And he doesn't get to he can take a nap while the guy was not born in this country, who was born under apartheid in South Africa, so has that mentality going on. He was pro-apartheid, as I understand it.
He's a naturalized citizen.
Right?
Now.
He's a naturalized citizen.
Now he's a naturalized citizen.
Oh, really? How did he do that? Did he come over the border legally?
He had an H-1B visa, I believe.
He flew in.
Yeah, he allegedly overstayed that visa.
Yeah, but I think this is just perfectly wonderful for Trump. He can take a nap and let this foreign agent, an enemy of the United States, do his job.
Anybody else?
Okay. You can't just flat out lie about a person. That's defamation, and that's what she did. And you would think the ladies of The View have learned their lesson right now. You would think one of their legal experts would have Sonny Hostin them, because you know how many times she did it. She had to do a mea culpa today on the show because that happened yesterday.
Musk was pro-apartheid. I don't really know for sure if he was. He grew up at that time when apartheid was in full bloom, before the great Nelson Mandela fixed that. He was around at that time, but maybe he was, maybe he wasn't. He might have been a young guy, too.
Might have been.
So don't be suing me, okay, Elon?
That's the best you got? By the way, can we get rid of this myth right now that Nelson Mandela ended apartheid? He didn't. The church ended apartheid. The church did. Nelson Mandela was around for it. Basically, he sat the whole time in jail. Was he a symbol of it? Absolutely. Did he become the leader afterwards? Absolutely. But it ended when the church said, no, you got to let the blacks into church. That's what really ended apartheid. Can we be real about history? Well, you know who is kind of waking up to history? Karine Jean-Pierre.
Now, that's a name I've not heard in a long time. A long time.
So apparently she was doing an interview, and she was shocked by the Democrat response to Joe Biden's disastrous debate. What does that really mean? What is she really saying? We'll play the clip for you in a second. She was shocked they didn't defend him because they'd been doing it the whole time. They'd been covering up for his decline. And I remember that night, I was sitting here watching the debate with Jim Walsh. I was sitting in this room, in the studio. We were watching it on those monitors right above me. And I remember saying, well, the media is just going to cover up for him. That was a disaster, but the media is going to say, oh, he had a bad night or whatever. Nobody was more shocked than me, apparently, except for Karine Jean-Pierre, that the media turned on Joe Biden and came after Joe Biden. This shows you how much she expects the MSDNCs of the world to just have their back.
Personally, I think what was the toughest thing to see in the 3 weeks was there was a disconnect for me. What was happening with leadership in the Democratic Party and how it was truly, as my former colleague, communications director Ben LeBolt said, it was a firing squad. And I had never seen anything like it before. I'd never seen a party do that in the way that they did. And it was hurtful and sad to see that happening. A firing squad around a person who I believe was a true patriot, a person who I believe did everything that he can for this country, a person who I believe, as I mentioned before, has done more in one term than most presidents had done in 2 terms, historical things. And I was shocked by what I was seeing.
And Karine, just to clarify, these are other Democrats and Democratic leadership coming out against Biden.
Yep, I had never seen anything like that. That was, if you're asking me, the thing that I saw in those 3 weeks, that was shocking. Shocking. And instead of coming together to really be unified and trying to figure out how do we save our democracy, how do we fight back, that's what I was seeing. And, you know, that's what we decided to do for 3 weeks. And, you know, it was truly, truly unfortunate. And I think it hurt us more than I think folks realized to have done that.
And I know we're coming, and thank you so much for your question.
Thank you so much for your question.
I know we're coming up on...
So hang on a second here. This only illustrates what we've been saying the whole time, that she was really the worst press secretary ever. Now, I know that as a Democrat, you assume the media is going to have your back. I get that. But what she's doubling down on is what a great president Joe Biden was and how he was with it and how he was spry and how he is so sharp and how he's a patriot. She is doubling down on that nonsense, which means she bought into the lie. I have a question. Did she ever meet with Joe Biden, or did they just tell her what to say? In the White House, no matter who's president, there are people who have access to president. Could be everybody. There are people who don't have access to the president. Did they just hand her something and say, this is what you read, this is what you say? Now, here's the problem. This is the horse she backed, and this is all she's got, because she had the opportunity to quit. She could have said after that debate performance, they've been lying to me, I'm out of here, I can't do this anymore. There are multiple times she said, I can't believe what they did to him with Kamala, I'm out of here. She could have done that a bunch of times. She had off-ramps. the entire time. She didn't take advantage of any of them. None of them. So this is where she's at now. And the reason you're not seeing her do the media tour, and you know what? She's not going to get to do it now. You think MSNBC wants to have her on to talk about how they turned on Joe Biden? No, of course not.
How about no?
Exactly. Dr. Evil knows the deal. So who's going to have her on right now? I think her career is done. You want to pay Karine Jean-Pierre to come speak at your event? That's usually how these guys make money afterwards. Yeah, I think she's kind of done in politics. I hear McDonald's is hiring. Here are lots. I mean, they lost that other guy who went on to become president of the United States. I mean, talk about a rags to riches story there. It's incredible. She can go help Joy Reid with whatever she's up to. Meanwhile, my friends, I love that Patty Murray is having this absolute breakdown over the federal workers getting fired and not being able to collect unemployment. Didn't hear you so vocal when Jay Inslee and Susie Levine lost all that money out of unemployment. Didn't you hear you that vocal when all those employees got fired for not taking the jab? And also, I got something else for you. Aren't you Democrats the ones who just say, oh, why don't you guys just go get green jobs instead?
Thank you, Jen. I do have a question on COVID, but first on energy. When is it that the Biden administration is going to let the thousands of fossil fuel industry workers, whether it's pipeline workers or construction workers, who are either out of work or will soon be out of work because of a Biden EO, when it is and where it is that they can go for their green job? And that is something the administration has promised. There is now a gap. So I'm just curious when that happens, when those people can count on that.
Well, I'd certainly welcome you to present your data of all the thousands and thousands of people who won't be getting a green job. Maybe next time you're here, you can present that.
But you said that they would be getting green jobs, so I'm just asking when that happens. Richard Trumka, who is a friend, longtime friend of Joe Biden, says about that day one Keystone EO, he says, I wish he, the president, had paired that more carefully with the thing that he did second by saying, here's where we are creating the jobs. So there's partial evidence from Richard Trumka.
Well, you didn't include all of his interview. Would you like to include the rest?
So how about this? The Laborers International Union of North America said the Keystone decision will cost 1,000 existing union jobs and 10,000 projected construction jobs.
Well, what Mr. Trumka also indicated in the same interview was that President Biden has proposed a climate plan with transformative investments in infrastructure and laid out a plan that will not only create millions of good union jobs, but also help tackle the climate crisis.
Where are all those good union jobs? Did they ever appear? Did they ever show up at all? No, not really. So why don't we just tell that to the federal workers? There's green jobs for you. Joe Biden created them. They're available. Go get them right now. When we come back, my friends, the latest insanity from Seattle. Apparently, a survey was done about what kind of shape our bathrooms are in our parks. And the results are entertaining. I'll just say that. Have them for you when we come back. You'll listen to the Ari Hoffman Show on Talk Radio 570 KVI. I was cracking up about this story from Como News. The headline is Seattle Park restrooms fail cleanliness audit. City pledges improvements. Can we be real about this for a second here? Do you ever want to use the bathroom in any park? Look, you guys know me. You know I love to hate on Seattle and the way they manage things, but public park restrooms, does anybody want to go into any of those? I don't know any city where anybody wants to use those things, to be fair. According to Como News, public restrooms in Seattle's parks are falling short of cleanliness standards, according to a recent report by the city auditor's office. A year-long review of 50 out of 129 park restrooms revealed that half were not clean, raising concerns about safety, hygiene, and accessibility. Wait a second. You're saying that a lot of them are clean? I think that's the most shocking thing from this entire story. Was that in Mount Baker or something? What are the nice neighborhoods that have the clean bathrooms? I don't know. So the park goers expressed frustration with the state of the facilities. I'm going to tell you a story. This is kind of gross. If it's TMI, Mike, you let me know. I'm in California to park with my kids one time, and just my stomach just goes nuts, and I go running to the bathroom, and there's no toilet seats at all. There's no toilet paper at all. I'm not going to elaborate on how that story ended, but that's what public park bathrooms are like. So park goers expressed frustration with the state of the facilities. Kelly Moat, a frequent park visitor, said, I've been met with really dirty floors, met with various substances, dirty toilet paper, sinks that don't work. I just don't touch anything. I agree. Go before you go, my friends. Joanne Harlman, another park user, shared her reluctance to use the public restroom, stating, I would much rather wait to go to Starbucks or something to use their restrooms. Well, it's a good thing Starbucks kicked out all the homeless people now. You can go there. Despite Seattle Parks and Rec annual expenditure of $3.7 million on bathroom renovations, the auditor's office noted that the department is not meeting its goal of cleaning each facility at least twice a day. Barbara Moat, a park enthusiast, voiced her concerns about the impact on visitors' experiences, saying these parks are fantastic, they're like none other. We just have a great city that's very well traveled. I'd hate to see them go, ew, Seattle is just so gross. They can't even maintain their bathrooms in the park. I think the parks are the least of our problems around here. Look at the streets. The audit team recommended 6 actions for Parks Department, including reassessing restroom cleanliness goals and resources. Oh, I know what we should do. You know what we should do? We should get those things they have at the airport. How was your visit? Touch that thing, the little smiley faces, which, by the way, why would anybody touch that? You're leaving the bathroom. I don't want to touch the doorknob when I leave a bathroom. All right, so reassess the restroom cleanliness, improving monitoring. Okay, does that mean more police officers? We do have park rangers, technically, for Seattle Parks. Does that mean more park rangers? Reviewing restroom operating hours. Close them down at night so the homeless aren't sleeping in your bathrooms. Conducting maintenance goals. Addressing risks related to renovation projects. Wait a second. That one's interesting to me. Addressing risks related to renovation projects. Does that mean your city workers are getting attacked in the bathrooms when they're renovating the bathrooms? Is that what that means? That's what it sounds like to me. The Parks Department has committed to implementing these recommendations. Justin Heller, a policy advisor for Seattle Parks and Rec, said, we have jumped into hiring laborers, and our intention is to hire as many vacant labor positions as possible this round. We aim to hire temporary, seasonal employees in a typical year, so we are hopeful that this will bring total maintenance levels back up to more typical levels. How many of them got fired because of COVID? The report also highlighted issues with restroom availability and vandalism, prompting hopes from the community for improved maintenance efforts. You know what I think we should do? Here's a new idea, out-of-the-box thinking. If you get caught vandalizing stuff in Seattle, spray painting, because I know there's that big push to put people in jail who vandalized or fine them or whatever the case may be, make them clean up the parks. Make them clean up the messes they made. I think that's a reasonable punishment, don't you? I remember when I used to coach baseball in Seattle Parks, my God, you would never know what was waiting for you. It was always getting progressively worse. I mean, occasionally you'd find a needle or something, a lot of garbage, a lot of vandalism, but it was getting progressively worse. And I remember one time we showed up and those giant knack boxes that are there that have all the equipment in them got totally stolen. Are the homeless having a baseball game somewhere and they want to steal that equipment for? I don't know. But here's the thing, guys. Let's look at Seattle Parks. Let's go way back to, I believe it was 2016, 2017. Do you remember the Seattle City Council had a brilliant idea that they want to house the homeless in Seattle's parks? And Seattle people went bonkers crazy and killed that idea. But that was the plan. And back then, what did we have? 3,000 homeless people around here. Now we've got 15, 30. Nobody actually even knows. That was the plan back then. Do you realize they got what they wanted by default? Because during COVID, they just let them stay wherever they wanted. Oh, they're in a park? Let them stay there. We're going to close the parks. Do you remember the COVID stupidity where they would put boards over the basketball hoops so you couldn't play basketball? Do you remember them filling in skate parks with sand in California? Do you remember the people down by the parks with the giant yardsticks telling you to keep 6 feet apart? Do you remember them telling you, you can't bike ride in this park because you might spit on somebody as you go past who's walking? Do you remember all this insanity? But if you're homeless, you can do drugs here. If you're homeless, you can live here. You don't need masks. We're not going to make you mask up. In fact, as many homeless as possible, let's cram them all together in one big park like they did at Ballard Commons. Oh, you mean we just redid this with the beautiful spray park and all the toys for the kids? Yeah, let's just let the homeless move into this sucker. Oh, Cal Anderson Park just redid the AstroTurf, have that beautiful field. Let's let the homeless move in. You know what? While we're at it, let's let Antifa take care of them along with BLM. We'll seize 6 blocks of the city. Let them take care of it. It takes stuff off our plate. Seattle Parks and Rec has been completely mismanaged for years, whether that's because of the Seattle City Council, whether that's because of the mayor's office, whether that's because of whatever it is. Our parks are a disaster. Is this bathroom study really surprising to anybody? I'm shocked there were still some clean bathrooms in Seattle parks more than anything else in the survey. Lots more to discuss as the show continues. When we come back, Bob Ferguson has his list of budget cuts, but he mentions one big-ticket item he refuses to cut. We'll have that insane audio for you when we come back. You're listening to the Ari Hoffman Show on Talk Radio 570 KVI. Welcome to the Ari Hoffman Show on Talk Radio 570 KVI, your home for the politically homeless, streaming at KVI.com and the KVI app. If you want to be part of the most dangerous show on the airwaves, call or text Warrior Injury Law Studio line at 206-421-5757. That's 206-421-5757. Coming up at 4:30 today, Brandy Cruz drops by. Give us the latest insanity from the media and why are people boycotting the Oscars this year? But before we get to any of that, yesterday, Bob Ferguson.
Yeah, it's not my name. All right, Turd Ferguson.
Bob Ferguson gave a list of all his preliminary cuts to the budget. And between his cuts and Jay Inslee's cuts, you're talking about $7 billion in theory. Now, I didn't see anything glaring from this. I didn't see any of their sacred cows in any of this. So it led me to believe, why are we spending this money in the first place? It all seemed like common sense stuff that you would have done beforehand. Now, to Bob Ferguson's credit, he said, we're not going to do any tax increases. He doesn't want to do tax increases. You and I know how that's going to end. But that's what he's saying for right now. However, there was something he said at the end of the press conference that showed me he's not serious about cuts. He's really not. None of the cuts they made were actually painful. So he was asked by a reporter about cutting DEI, because don't forget, a few days ago we had that report where they could be saving millions of dollars by cutting some of their DEI programs. I don't know who the reporter was with, which outlet, but here's what Bob Ferguson said in response to that.
President Trump has sought to undo DEI programs nationwide. At the same time, some Republicans in the Washington state legislature a couple of weeks ago introduced a bill that would, I believe, eliminate the Office of Equity.
That's not going to happen. Yeah.
Okay. Any sorts of consideration on comparing that to any money?
Had a whole press conference here 2 weeks ago about the subject of Donald Trump and DEI, and I think I covered it pretty thoroughly there. We've got our values. We're going to stick with our values, and that's part of what this has been, and that as well. So, yeah, that won't happen. Yes.
What are your values with DEI? Telling white kids they're racist? Let me ask you this for a second. Can you tell me one school in Washington, one public school in Washington, where after you instituted DEI, the grades went up? Anybody? Nobody? Of course you can't. DEI makes grades worse because you're replacing actual curriculum with this nonsense. Doesn't include Asians. Tells you, oh, Asians, they're not a protected class. Or this whole intersectionality garbage is so dumb. So dumb. You want to know what else the Democrats are working on right now? Legislative Democrats have advanced legislation, Senate Bill 5179, that's going to interfere with local school district curriculums, force them to teach DEI and hypersexualized education and everything else. So if you think to yourself right now, my school district's fine, because there are some of them that are staying away from this nonsense, even here in Washington, they're going to make you do it or you don't get state funding. That's what Senate Bill 5179 is going to do. So if you want to reject Senate Bill 5179, you call the legislative hotline, 1-800-562-6000. That's 1-800-562-6000. And you say no to Senate Bill 5179. If you can't remember the number of the bill, you call them up and you say, I want to say no to this gender ideology, this DEI garbage that's being put into my kids' curriculum. You want to know how crazy this intersectional garbage is? Let's just go to the North Shore School District. I think the craziest school districts are, in no particular order, Seattle, Olympia, North Shore. I think those are some of the craziest districts. The North Shore School District put out a post that with Ramadan coming up, that they're going to be sending home meals because Muslim kids would be fasting during Ramadan, and they're going to be sending meals home with the kids. Do I have a problem with this? No, I'm not a monster, okay? They're saying, well, there's some kids that don't get dinner at home because they're poor, whatever. These are the only meals they're going to get. Send it home with them. I'm fine with that. But here's where your DEI problem comes in. If you're going for equity, then for Lent, are you guys going to make sure you have fish-only meals, non-meat meals for Lent for all the Catholic kids that are poor? You guys going to do that? Because I don't think I've ever seen any of that. Or how about this? Passover's coming up for the Jewish kids. You going to have matzah for them in schools? Because I'll tell you something. I'd be shocked if any of these schools have a kosher cafeteria. No way they do. The kosher options here are, shall we say, sparse. Hey, that reminds me, by the way, are the meals you're sending home halal? Because I don't know if they are or they're not. Do you guys have halal facilities? Because you know it's pretty strict the way they do that with the meats and everything else. It's not as strict as the kosher stuff. But I have a question about this. See, this is where the DEI stuff goes off the rails. So in your effort to be more accommodating to Muslims, you're forgetting everybody else's religion on top of it. That's the problem with this DEI thing, because it picks winners and losers. Oh, we want to be nice to the Muslims? Oh, forget those Jews. Oh, forget those Catholics because they're white. That's what it is. That's the insanity. You get more insanity out of this DEI. You get people who shouldn't be in the positions they're in. I saw this story breaking yesterday. Do you guys remember the story of the cocaine principals?
High on cocaine and armed with a loaded gun. That's what Redmond police say they saw when they confronted a local elementary school principal at a QFC.
A lot of cocaine was lost. I need you to go and get it.
No, don't eat that, don't eat that.
Let's see what kind of effect that has on you.
The principal
did cocaine.
Principal
Did cocaine.
There was a principal.
It was.
Hey, that's inappropriate.
What's wrong with that principal? Shoot it! Speed up!
Higher, baby, and don't ever come down.
Ah, yes, the cocaine principles. Let's reiterate the tale. Let's tell what happened for those of you that may be new to the Ari Hoffman Show. So back in 2023, there was an incident in a QFC parking lot. Police responded, Bothell police responded. Oh, Redmond police, responded when QFC and other people in the parking lot said there was a guy acting erratically and his family was running all over the place, and they found Michael Griffin in the parking lot. Michael Griffin at the time was a public school principal, and he had a gun on him, and his face had cocaine on it, and he was clearly having a meltdown. He was convinced that his wife was being trafficked, that somebody was trying to take his kids. He pointed to an Amazon van and accused them of being behind it. Now, Amazon's got problems, don't get me wrong, but human trafficking would be new. Can you get human trafficking through Prime? Can you order somebody through Prime? I'm sorry. Okay, bad joke. But seriously, this guy was out of his mind on cocaine. And what happened was his kids were lost. It was a whole mess, but they found a gun on him. So the guy who's addicted to cocaine has a gun on him. Then what happens is they find his wife, who's clearly terrified, but then she admits that both of them have been doing cocaine for over a year, and she's a principal as well. Now, the North Shore School District, North Shore puts both of them on paid administrative leave pending an investigation. Now, what that normally means in any public school district is that these people just get shifted somewhere else in the district. Now, apparently, Megan Griffin, who's the wife, she got a cushy administrative type job, and there is still a Michael Griffin listed as a substitute teacher, which means they're both still in the district. Now, to show you I'm not cold-hearted, if they went to rehab, if they got their lives under control, they should be able to re-enter society. It's a disease. It's a sickness. They 100% should be able to re-enter society. But did they? Because did anybody check to see if they did? So what happened was at another local school in the district, they appointed Megan Griffin to be the assistant principal. Now, I would also say is that you have to win back trust. So I would say maybe substitute teacher, learning center, work it back up. Don't immediately go right to administrative. But they put her in as assistant principal. The parents found out about it, started a petition, got hundreds of signatures, and she was gone in a couple days. But this is what these school districts do. They don't fire anybody. They don't discipline anybody. They just move them around. Hey, by the way, a couple weeks ago, I was curious about Ian Golash. Ian Golash, around this time last year is when he got put on leave. And I'm thinking to myself, hey, it's been about a year. Maybe I should check in with Seattle Public Schools. Do you know what they told me? He is on paid administrative leave pending an investigation. A year later, it's been a year. For the guy who was hanging up posters of Hamas terrorists in his classroom. For the guy who was failing kids for saying men couldn't get pregnant. For the guy who was praising what happened on October 7th. That's what these school districts do. They don't fire anybody. That's DEI. Because DEI isn't only about the color of your skin. The other thing that DEI is about is DEI is also about Well, if you're on our team, you're not a bad white person. And Ian Golash is on their team. They protect these bad teachers. I love how the left is always like, we got to get the bad cops out of the system. And then when you say, all right, now do teachers. Oh, no. There's all teachers. They're underpaid. How dare you? You are demonizing people who are underpaid. You know, a lot of teachers in Seattle public schools make more than I do. I've seen the salary rolls. They do okay for 9 months worth of work. But what happens is when you have this DEI insanity and you're telling kids they can talk to their teachers about sex, guess what happens? They start talking to their teachers about sex. They start talking to their teachers about all the stuff they shouldn't necessarily be talking to a teacher about. And then I saw this report from the Seattle Times. You remember back in December, there was a guy named Gregory Ward. He was a tutor for Seattle public schools. I think we were the ones that broke this story. We may have been the ones that broke the story. Gregory Ward was a tutor for Seattle public schools. He was an employee of an organization called City Year, which is some contractor for Seattle public schools. And it turns out he was allegedly having sex with a 13-year-old student, and they were having relationships via text message. Well, now Seattle Public Schools, according to the Seattle Times, says it plans to review all outside organizations whose employees work with students to determine how they handle background checks. Hang on a second. Why didn't you do this beforehand? You guys didn't even think to yourselves, wait, before we hire this company, maybe we should see how they do background checks. Let's go to my own experience for a second here. The Millionaires Club, I know they changed their name, but they used to do a lot of work with the homeless, and I would subcontract out the Millionaires Club to do labor for me. So, for example, a lot of the stadiums, by the way, do the exact same thing. They need a lot of help on game days. They need a lot of temporary help. They help a lot of homeless people for that. I had to talk to the Millionaires Club about how they do background checks because my business was event rentals. A lot of kids going to be around. Had to know they weren't people that had those kind of criminal records. Had to know what their criminal records were. Had to do my own background checks. You're saying that Seattle Public Schools went, no, they got it. Just like when you're riding in a cab. No, that driver's got it. He's got it. Old Seinfeld line there. Really? You guys didn't do this beforehand? No wonder you've had problems. You want me to be impressed with this? You think this is going to win back people? No. Any normal parent is going to say, wait, you didn't look into this beforehand? You didn't do your own background checks? Mike, would you like to know how much a background check costs? How much one background check costs? $11. $11. That means for just $11, you could avoid $1 million in lawsuits. At least that's how much it cost when I used to do background checks. $11. That is it. And you know what? Predators go where there is prey. Whether it's a private school, whether it's a public school, you get this insanity. A 32-year-old Seattle area teacher has been charged with sex crimes involving very young children. John Dottie, a now former science teacher at the Archbishop Murphy High School in Everett, Washington, was arrested after law enforcement found files on his computer containing explicit child pornography. According to the court documents we got a hold of, many of the victims were between 4 and 7, with some as young as 1 year old. Now, the court document said, he said that he doesn't find the content with kids sexually arousing and doesn't have any interest in kids, but he finds it exciting to know he's doing something illegal. I'm sorry, wait, what? He described downloading, watching, and distributing the child abuse materials as very silly but thrilling, like, oops, I did a crime. Predators go where there is prey. That's what they do. And us parents are having less and less tools to protect them. So the legislature earlier this week heard Senate Bill 5708, which is about addictive feeds that require social media companies to warn minors that their parents are monitoring their activity. Wait. Warn the kids that their parents are monitoring the activity? You must be saying that wrong. It must be warn the parents that their kids are watching dirty things. Oh, no. No. I read from the bill. If the online service, product, or feature allows the minor's parent, guardian, or any other individual or entity to monitor the minor's child online activity or track the minor's location, it must provide a signal to the minor when the minor is being monitored or tracked. Let me tell you something. My kids are low-jacked up the wazoo, but like most parents, I'm not checking most of the time. I check when I'm like, wait, where is that kid? They were supposed to be home already. Or I say, wait a minute. They've been in their room a long time. What are they watching on their phone? Now you're telling me you're trying to make it so the kid knows the parent is watching so they can behave. Oh, we're going to get rid of that screen right now. We're going to shut that thing off. Mom and dad are coming. My God. Now the state wants to help the kid who's got the comic book behind the textbook. That's what it is. They're saying, oh, okay, all right, hang on. We're going to have we're going to put a camera in your room. Can you imagine this? We're going to have a state-sponsored camera. Let's go back to the 1980s. A state-sponsored alarm that tells you when your parents are coming down the hall. You don't have to listen for the creaking floorboard. No. We're going to know, so where the state is going to tell you when mom and dad are coming, so you can throw that comic book, stash it under your pillow, stash it under your covers, sit on it, whatever the case may be. This is basically the new version of that. That's Senate Bill 5708. Thank you to my friend Todd Myers who told us about this one. It's crazy. So basically, they don't even want you to be able to check in on what your kids are doing. I know my kids sometimes listen to the show. Guys, you have no idea how low-jacked your phones are, your tablets are, and my cars are. Oh, actually, you do know about the cars, by the way. But here's the thing also, guys. The state is trying to take your kids away from you. They think they can take care of your kids better than you can. And this is a new level of insanity. Do I know that kids have ways around these things? Absolutely. But you're going to try and help them find ways around these things? The state wants your kids. That's what they want. So if you want to say no to Senate Bill 5708, you call 1-800-562-6000. That's 1-800-562-6000. And you say no to Senate Bill 5708. If you can't remember the number for the Senate bill, you say, I want to say no to that insane bill that's going to tell my kid that I'm checking out what they're doing. This is absolutely crazy. You can't give me any justification for this thing. In fact, I'm going to reach out to the sponsors of this bill, ask them to come on the show. I know what their answer is probably going to be because they're probably not going to agree to come on the show, but I'll reach out to them and ask them the question about this one because it's absolutely crazy. It's absolutely insane. We have a hard enough time protecting our kids from these parents. Now the state is trying to protect your kid from you just seeing what they're watching on Netflix, just seeing what they're doing online. It's hard enough as a parent. Now they're trying to make it harder. Absolutely crazy. Absolutely. Just when you think they can't get any crazier, yeah, they do. When we come back, my friends, egg prices are sky high. Is there something we can actually do about it? JT Wilcox will be joining us. Plus, why are so many people boycotting the Oscars? We'll have that story for you when we come back. You're listening to the Ari Hoffman Show on Talk Radio 570 KVI. The discussion that the Democrats are trying to have is the price of eggs, claiming that Donald Trump made it so bad that eggs are unaffordable. Apparently, they're forgetting the last 4 years and everything that happened. And also, apparently, they're forgetting that here in Washington, our eggs have been expensive for a while because of things the Democrats have done. Joining us now to discuss on the KVI studio line, former representative in the Washington House of Representatives, currently right now working as a farmer. My friend and yours, JT Wilcox. How are you today, sir?
I'm great. Thanks very much, Ari. I refer to myself as an aging rancher.
Okay, we'll go with aging rancher for now. But I think you're the expert on this because of Wilcox Farms and everything else. Why is the price of eggs so high, and what can we do to fix it?
Well, first of all, this is a kind of an ongoing problem. We've had avian influenza at a pretty high level for the last 2 or 3 years. And, in the egg business, you do have these, every decade or so, a major disease that is difficult to handle. And then you handle it and it goes away and, then egg prices crash again. But this has been very persistent. And it doesn't matter who's president, that disease has killed a lot of chickens. And, we're just dealing with that shortage.
So, of course, you're going to have, when you have a shortage, you're going to have these problems with prices going up. But at the same time, it seems like we have our own problems here in Washington because didn't they start taxing us depending on what kind of storage you have for your chickens?
Well, that's a new one to me. What did happen a few years ago is there was the sense that all up and down the West Coast there was going to be initiatives that would require that chickens be handled in a certain way. And the industry in Washington came and asked the legislature to pass a bill that would require that chickens not be in cages. And my family is fairly neutral on that because that was our direction already. But all up and down the West Coast now, you have these rules. I think in California, there actually was an initiative that was very, very strict about this. And that hasn't caused the major increase in the cost of eggs, but it probably has had some impact, although right now it's almost all the fact that millions and millions of birds have either died from the disease or had to have been disposed of because they came from infected flocks or flocks that were nearby infected.
We are talking with aging rancher, as he likes to be called, but we like to call him former representative in the Washington legislature, JT Wilcox. So the Department of Agriculture was discussing about the possibilities of how to deal with this. They're talking, of course, treating the viruses. They're talking about protecting the birds, but they're also talking about importing eggs. Is that really going to help bring down the prices right now?
Well, it's a worldwide market, and probably that would make a minor impact. The biggest thing that we think should happen is we should have an approved vaccine. This is the way almost every other chicken disease has been handled in the past. It causes some problems for some U.S. producers because there are countries that won't accept I believe chicken meat, broilers and fryers that have been vaccinated. But for the bulk of the industry, and if you care just about the price of eggs, you should be cheering them on to approve a vaccination.
So then you approve of the vaccination, you approve of maybe trying to import some eggs here or there, but it's going to not necessarily solve the problem. If you were running the show, what would you be telling the president right now to do?
Oh, I would be saying look at approving a vaccine. That is what has happened every other time the industry's been threatened by a serious disease. The thing that makes this one so hard to deal with is it is spread by wild birds. And, they move across the country, well, really north and south, across the country twice a year. And most chickens are raised where they're growing lots of grain, and that's where the wild birds want to be as well. And we're lucky in my family, virtually all of our chickens are in places that are off the beaten path, not a lot of grain grown where we have chickens. And so we've not really had the same exposure that others have.
Aging rancher and former representative for the Washington legislature, JT Wilcox, thanks so much for being with us today. Really do appreciate it.
Oh, well, thank you. I really appreciate it, Ari. You have a great day.
Yeah, you as well. Always a pleasure. Switching gears entirely for a minute here to what's going on this weekend. I had no idea the Oscars were happening this weekend. No clue at all. In fact, I don't even know who's nominated. 5 minutes before this clip, before this segment, I pulled up the list of Oscars and who's nominated. I haven't seen a single movie that's nominated. Not one. And we go to a lot of movies around here because we review them every single Monday during The Real Deal. Like we are going to do this Monday and give away fantabulous prizes at 4:45. I cannot name for you a single one. Now, I never watch the red carpet ceremony either. Never, ever do. Because I don't care about fashion. This year, me and a lot of pro-Israel types are actually going to be watching the red carpet because apparently a whole bunch of these guys are going to be wearing red pins. A whole bunch of these actors are wearing red pins. They have a hand in them, and it's a red circle with the pin on it. It's for Artists for a Ceasefire because they're saying Israel has blood on its hands. Except they picked a really, really bad symbol, my friends. First of all, you're going to do this the week after Hamas returned 2 dead children and their mother and got the bodies wrong with the mother and had to return somebody else. But number 2, in the year 2000, 2 Israelis ended up in Ramallah, and they were lynched by the crowd. They were lynched by the peaceful Palestinians. And what happened was some of the Palestinians who lynched them went to the window and held up their red hands covered in blood to show it off to the crowd that was showing their approval beneath them. So for us, that's a pretty bad symbol. But you're going to have these celebrities that are, we don't want any bloodshed. We want a ceasefire. First of all, I never hear any of you fools call for a ceasefire in Ukraine. You're like, more, give me more. I want to blow up more. That's number 1. But number 2, you actors are in no position to lecture anybody about anything, as the great Ricky Gervais says. Let's take that one right there. So you're all going to get up there. You're going to give your little speeches like you did last year. Nobody's watching because nobody's seen your movies, and you're making yourselves more and more irrelevant. I bet most people like me had no idea the Oscars were happening. I bet most people like me aren't even going to. I don't even know who's hosting. I have no clue who's hosting the Oscars. I don't know at all. I don't know what songs are. There's nothing I'm even looking forward to, and I'm a movie guy. I'm a guy who used to watch the Oscars the entire time because I love the Oscars. I don't even care anymore. Hollywood has shown how irrelevant it has become. You guys want to be bleeding heart liberals? Your heart aches for everybody? It aches for everybody unless you're a Jew. So that's what I'm going to be watching the Oscars for this weekend, to see which celebrities are wearing those pins, either out of ignorance or because they know exactly what they stand for. When we come back, my friends, we're going to be talking with Brandy Cruz about the latest insanity in the Washington State Legislature with analysis. You're listening to the Ari Hoffman Show on Talk Radio 570 KVI.